Hi everyone, this is Krupa from Color My Soul. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create this design using some household items as dotting tools. So first up, I have indicated the diameter measurements of each of these items. And please excuse my handwriting. I just scribbled it down really quickly so that you can actually see them, so that if you don't have any of these items, you can always search around your own home to see what is available that matches these sizes. So first up, our smallest tool is a 2mm skewer. Then we have a skewer again that's a little bit thicker on the edge, and that's 3mm in diameter. Next up is a dowel stick that's 4mm, a pencil that's 5mm, and this is my lip ice or chapstick, which is 10mm in diameter across the edge on the side. We'll also be using the end of a brush for our dots that go from big to small. We'll also be using a compass and a chalk pencil to draw some guidelines. If you don't have a compass, have a look around to see what you can use to trace around the rim to get a circle. This, for example, is the lid of my spray paint bottle, a cap, a paint bottle. You can also use a drinking glass, a bowl, a plate. I will be indicating the measurements for each circle that we draw, so have a look to see what matches that to trace out your circles. If you don't have chalk pencil, a normal pencil will work as well, and I'll explain to you why in a second. My project surface is a square wooden board which has been spray painted black, but you can also use project board or cardboard that is thicker than paper. So this design that I created was also done on a thin piece of project board. Coming back to the chalk pencil versus pencil, I'm going to be using chalk pencil on my wooden board because the guidelines will be easily erasable using a damp cloth or a wet wipe. But if you are using cardboard, you can draw in pencil and that won't be a problem, because on paper, normal pencil will be easily removable with an eraser. The first thing we're going to do is find the center point of our project board. So my square board is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So I'm going to measure 5 centimeters on each side. And just join the lines. To find the center point. Next, we want to divide our board into 8 segments. So we take the line straight across diagonally. So our board is now divided into 8 segments. Next, we're going to take a compass and our chalk pencil. Okay, the first circle that we are going to draw measure 1.5 centimeters, and we're going to draw this circle. Okay, from 1.5 centimeters we're going to go to 2.5 centimeters. from here we take it to 3.5 centimeters. And the last circle is going to be 4.5 centimeters. Stencils have really made our lives so much easier. There we have it. Guidelines drawn. Okay, let's start off by making our center dot with our 10mm tool. So we dip into the paint and place your dot on that center point. Have a paper towel handy, because every single time you are done using a tool, we're going to wipe it off with a paper towel and move on to the next dots. And that is with our 3mm skewer tool. That was the shorter one. We're going to make 8 dots around the center dot and right next to the center dot. So take your time. Dotting is all about patience. You've got to really take your time with this. Okay, so our 8 dots are completed. Let's wipe the tool off really nicely. And in the very same tool, on the pointy side, we're going to dip into paint and make a teeny tiny dot in between each of these dots. Dip after every dot. There we go. We wipe the tool off nicely and get the next paint out. So now we're using dark pink. We're using still the very same tool, the 3mm skewer, and we're making a dot right next to the light pink dot, but also make sure you've got to be mindful of your guidelines all the time. So make sure that your dot falls just on or inside of actually the first circle. Okay, so for the next dot, I'm going to show you something. This is the yellow dot that we're going to make next. That's this one over here. And you'll notice that it actually is bigger than the 2 pink dots that we've just made. But we're going to use the same tool to make that bigger shot, to make that bigger dot, and this is how. So that is with our yellow paint. Okay, so your dot needs to be on the line and in between the 2 pink dots. Okay, so if you dip 2 or 3 times and you place a dot on the same spot, you'll notice it starts getting bigger. That's one way of doing it. Or if you dip the paint more, if you dip the tool more into the paint, the dot also becomes bigger. All right, so sometimes even if you don't have all of the tool sizes, this is just one way that you can compromise to make it work. We're loading more paint every time, so the dot is actually getting bigger and bigger. So just dip into the paint each time. And that's how we make our dots bigger. Okay, next up we are going to use the light green paint, and our tool is our pencil. We're going to use our pencil, and this dot is going to be placed directly above the pink dot. So we dip our tool into the paint and we place the dot. Okay, so this is what I want you to do as well. Place the dot right in the center of the line, and by the time you finish placing the dot, it will land up next to the dark pink dot. Okay, so between the first circle and the second circle, imagine the center point of this line here, and that's where you place in your dot. And by the time you place the dot finished, it reaches the edges of both of the circles. Okay, let's wipe our tool clean. Okay, the next dot that we're gonna make is the green one in between each, the dark green one in between each of the light green ones. So for that, we're gonna use the tool that we were using just now, which is the bamboo skewer tool, 3 millimeters in diameter, with our dark green paint. Dip and place the dot right in the center of the two light green dots. There we go. Clean our tool off. All right, the next dots are going to be these two little dots, still the dark green color. So for this, we are using our thinner skewer tool. So you want to place the dot just to the left and just to the right of the previous dark green dot. to the left, to the right. Dip after every dot. And keeping our guidelines in mind, we are still placing the dots so that we are just on the circle guideline. We're not quite going over it as yet. Okay. Let's get our dark pink paint out, and we're going to be using our 10mm tool again. So we dip into the paint, and we're making a dot this time directly above the green dot. Remember that your paint spreads out of the side of the tool when you're placing the dot. So just keep a bit of a distance before you press down, so that by the time you finish placing your dot, it ends up close to the dot that you want it to be next to. Okay, we clean our tool off nicely. Next up, we're going to grab the light pink paint, and we are going to now use our 4mm dowel stick. And now we're placing a dot directly above the dark pink dot. I'm rotating my board just so that I'm not reaching over any wet paint, and therefore I'm less likely to smudge. There we go. Okay. Using the same paint color, light pink, we are now going to go over to our 3mm bamboo tool, our skewer, and we make a dot right next to the light pink dot as well as next to the dark pink. So we're sort of forming an angle. Always be mindful of where you're placing your dots. And although spacing will come with practice, just be mindful of your spacing as well. That's why take your time when placing each dot. So that you can mindfully place it exactly where you want it to be. We've done all of the one side already. So we can do the other side. So we are dipping, so far in all the steps we've done, we are dipping our tool into the paint after every single dot that we make. One more. See? There we go. All right. Next up, we grab our dark pink paint. And now finally, we get to use our paintbrush on the back end. So this is what I want you to do. We dip once into the paint. Start next to the light pink dot and just dip once and continue making dots. All right, then you dip again and just continue making dots. And as the paint is running out, our dots are becoming smaller. You should be getting about anything between 5 to 7 dots after each dip. It doesn't have to be the same on every single one. So it's not necessary to count. Just continue until you run out of space, and also or until you run out of paint. But about anything between 5 to 7 dots is what you should be getting. Okay. I'm going to wipe my tool off before I start off on the other side. Okay, so remember we just dip, and now we start the other side. Try and stay as close as possible to the dot that you are working around. So I'm using this dark pink dot as my guideline right now, and I'm just trying to hug the dots around it. So this brush has a rounded end at the back, and that's the reason that we are able to get this effect where the dots go from big to small. You need to have an end that's round or that's a ball. Okay. Wipe our tool off, close our paint bottle, and now we can move on to the next step. So we grab our dark green paint and our thicker bamboo skewer tool again, 3 millimeters. Let's dip into the paint and make a dot right there in between the 2 smaller green dots. So we do that all around. All done. Clean tool. Let's close this bottle and get our next paint out, which is light green. All right, we are using the back of the paintbrush again. We are dipping once, and we start after the dark green dot, and we just continue in a straight line. I'm getting about 6 dots here. Let your tool lightly touch the surface. And as the paint comes off, your dots get smaller. There we go. That is all our base dots completed. So we need to leave this to dry before we do our next step, which is placing dots on top of these base dots. So I'm going to leave this to dry and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, our first layer of paint is dry, so we can now apply our second layer of dots. We are going to grab our skewer tool, the one that's a little bit bigger, the 3mm, and some dark green paint, and all we're going to do is place a little dot on top of each of these light green dots. So we just dip into the paint after placing every dot. Okay, done with one. Now we grab our yellow paint and we're going to grab our pencil to do a second row of dots on each of these dark pink. All right, here goes. Dip and dot. Remember not to reach over wet paint. Rather rotate your project. There we go. Wipe the tool off with our paper towel. Let's close this paint bottle. And there we have it. That is our design done. So this is now gonna stand again for at least 24 hours this time, so that it can be completely dry. And once it is, I'm gonna take I've done my guidelines in chalk pencil, so I'm going to take either a damp cloth or a wet wipe, which works perfectly fine as well, and gently wipe off all of these guidelines. If you've used a pencil, you can just erase them once the paint is completely dry, and you will be left with your final design, where all the guidelines are removed and all you're left with is the pattern that you've created with your dots. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been helpful. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give me a thumbs up, or please give me feedback on whether you enjoyed the videos or what I can do to improve. And look out for my next video. Thank you for watching.